All right, let's move on to another story that we actually broke here on the platform yesterday, but a story that, as I look deeper into it, is more and more curious. The announcement buried in a press release from the Education Minister, Erica Stanford, yesterday, that the current RSE, Relationship and Sexuality Education curriculum in schools, is going to be axed by the end of term one next year, and this applies in primary and secondary schools. It has been widely criticised, and I often receive communication emails from parents flabbergasted at the sort of material that their kids are being exposed to at school in the interest of sex education. Relationships about how to pleasure themselves and others, about sexual practices that one would consider extremely, advanced maybe, if that's the right word. And also, we've looked into this and found that much of our education system has been basically penetrated, I've got to be careful using that word, by groups like Inside Out, who are very, very liberal, very pro-trans. And it has caused great concern for parents. And part of the coalition agreement with New Zealand First was that it would be axed. I think you've got to be careful of unintended consequences. But firstly, for a response to this, we're joined now from Family First, who have been into this, and as the organisation which has been denied charitable status because of a Bent Charities Commission, Family First represented on this issue by Simon O'Connor, who joins us now. Simon, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Sean, it's lovely to be back. Wearing a different hat this time.
Yeah, that's right. Look, I know this issue, and I know from my inbox and conversations that I have with people, and I'm going to say warping, and I have personally come across how this works 10 years ago with my son. The queer advocacy, essentially, that has taken over some schools' RSE training, a real problem. And it was like it was a recruitment drive for certain communities, as we call them. The minister announced this, what was it, Tuesday morning? But she buried it inside a press release about an ERO report, which had clearly been leaked to woke journalists, which said, we're going to rewrite the curriculum and we're not going to let parents have any say about it.
Oh, it was a shocker, but very political. As you say, it was deliberately, well, I would suggest it was deliberately structured that way, which shows there's uncomfortability in the government around this. But kudos to, in this case, New Zealand First. They've pushed for the removal of the RSE, but the devil's now in the detail, and you hinted at it in your introduction, Shawnee, what comes next, and you're already getting that direction from ERO, and you've nailed one of the big ones. They don't want parents to be consulted. I was just saying to my wife this morning, when it comes to sex education, parents sort of know a little bit about this, but ipso facto, they've had children, they know how these things work, and here's the ERO right at the outset saying, look, we don't want parents to be consulted. And if you note, is it Radio New Zealand? Dare I mention another channel?
John Gerritson's really weird story about it, but yeah. John Gerritson aligned with the Teachers Union, clearly left-wing as a journalist. He's the education correspondent. He had been leaked the ERO report, and he constructed an entirely different narrative than the fact that this curriculum was being dropped. He basically had the headline, ERO says bigotry and homophobia are terrible and parents shouldn't have any say in the sex education of their children.
Oh, again, I think that's just totally inappropriate, and Family First think that's totally inappropriate. Parents are the first and best educators, particularly for the really young. I mean, this is one of the key things for your listeners to understand is that the sex curriculum or the sexuality curriculum, RSE, whatever they want to call it, whatever they're going to propose, this is from literally 5-year-olds onwards. We're not talking those last years of secondary school. We are talking deeply, often very explicit material, right down to the age of 5. And it's just, you were mentioning the emails you get. We get many at Family First. In fact, we've done various resources on it, collating some of the information. It's deeply disturbing. And, why I referenced that RNZ headline where it's says plans are going to be derailed by misinformation, bigotry, and threats of violence. They're already trying to set the scene again against parents. Any parent who says, actually, I don't want my 6-year-old exposed to, pornography-type documents. Oh, no, well, that's just misinformation. You're a bigot. It's actually quite intolerable.
Yeah. So, the other thing is, I get the feel, and look, to a certain extent, New Zealand First have said, we made this promise, we've got it done. I'm talking to Winston Peters after 8 o'clock this morning, which should be interesting. But it's not done. And it would seem to me the bureaucrats, the woke bureaucrats and the people like Inside Out who've made lots of money off these sorts of policies, they are still essentially trying to run the government on this. And I'll be honest, I look at it now. I just want to check with Ben. Ben, we got nothing back for our request for an interview from the ERO.
Yep, nothing back.
So while they're happy to leak their report to John Gerritsen and play inside of them, they're flatbed us. Anything from Erica Stanford, the Minister of Education, yesterday?
Nothing yesterday. No, still going to try that today.
Amazing. So what I'm saying to you, Simon, is I don't think the Education Minister actually wants to change a thing, and I think she's in the thrall of our legacy media and activist bureaucrats.
I think that's an entirely appropriate conclusion. I think this will be making many in the government, not all, very uncomfortable. But kudos and not waving political flags, despite my background, that Winston has delivered on their promise, but it's only a quarter of the way there, because actually what comes next is actually the more critical question now. It's well and good to drop it, and you can wave a flag and say, yep, we got that, fine. But what comes next? Because arguably it could be the same, but just dressed up differently, or it could be worse.
It seems to me, Simon, this is an issue at the very heart of Family First. The title of the organisation says it, we put family first.
Yes.
And part of this is to take family out, and as I say, I've had personal, direct experience of this, is to take families and parents out of the sex education or this important part of life education of their kids and hand it over to ideologues who are essentially recruiting for their minority groups.